We know that the ancient Egyptians believed it important to preserve the body after death. And so they developed a process that we call mummification. If we look to the bottom scene here, we see two corpses painted black. They're being covered in a natron solution. Natron is a naturally occurring mixture of sodium carbonate and sodium bicarbonate with sodium chloride and sodium sulfate. So a salt to dry out and preserve the body. The god of embalming was the jackal-headed god Anubis, god of the cemeteries and protective during the embalming process. A priest would wear a ceramic mask in the form of a jackal head. He would become the god Anubis in order to perform the protective rituals during the embalming process. Even when foreigners ruled Egypt, the ancient Egyptians continued to mummify their dead, to preserve the bodies. We're looking here at a scene that dates to the Roman period in Egypt, and we see to the right, once more, the jackal-headed god Anubis performing the final rituals over the mummified body, lying out on a lion-form embalming table. The ancient Egyptians dried out the body, but they could only do this by removing the internal organs and preserving them separately. These were then placed in ceremonial pots. The jackal, human, falcon, and baboon heads are the heads of protective deities. Over time, the internal organs were preserved separately and then returned to the body for wrapping, or perhaps wrapped and placed alongside the body. But these protective deities were still considered important. These jars aren't functioning jars, they are purely symbolic or ceremonial. The human is associated with the liver, the baboon with the lungs, the falcon with the lower intestines, and the jackal with the stomach. These protective deities had names. From left to right, we're looking at Imseti, Duamutef, Kebeksenuef, and Hapi. The ancient Egyptians wrapped the preserved body in linen bandages and included in those wrappings numerous amulets. The obsidian 2 fingers in the middle position there, they are important to the ancient Egyptians because these amulets were placed over the incision in the body to protect and seal it. In fact, the ancient Egyptians tell us what each of the amulets should have been made of and where it should be positioned. We see these instructions in the Book of the Dead here with representations of amulets. From left to right, the Jed pillar of stability, the Tiet knot of protection of Isis, the Eb, the heart amulet, and also an amulet in the form of a headrest. The Eye of Horus amulet was a particularly important one because it represents wholeness, completeness, the entire human body brought together, healed and preserved for eternity. And the scarab beetle, a symbol of rebirth into the afterlife, associated with sunrise and the idea of the dung beetle rolling a ball of dung across the ground, as if the sun rolling towards the horizon at sunrise. We have scenes of the wrapping of the body in those linen bandages. And of course we have the body themselves beautifully wrapped, preserved for eternity. Once wrapped, the mummified body was placed in a coffin. And very often this coffin was also in the form of a mummified body, human form, beautifully painted and decorated. We find the body very often was placed in a coffin within a coffin, a nest of coffins for the ultimate preservation for eternity.